The New York Mets are not only the laughingstock of Major League Baseball, but have to be the laughingstock of all sports in America in general. This is just now being said after a terrible month where they went 7-18 in May after heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss, and it got topped off with a player getting ejected, calling the Mets the worst team in Major League Baseball, and then cut from the team. They have had a manager get fired before managing a game, had another manager that threatened to beat up a beat reporter after doing his job, and even had a player miss most of a season after getting ran over by a boar on his farm in the offseason. The New York Mets seem to find ways to lose baseball games that only they can, which is why they have their nickname, the Lull Mets. Not only do they have the strangest off-field issues, but they also tend to lose in the worst ways possible too. They've lost on the easiest infield pop-ups ever, and even had countless random injuries that no other team could imagine having if they were not the Mets.
Do you want to be here tomorrow?
I'll be here.
When do I get joy? When? Why can't I ever get anything? I get to watch the Dodgers win, the Braves win, the Yankees win. When did the Mets get their chance? When?
The New York Mets are one of the most historic franchises in Major League Baseball, after being founded in 1962 and winning 2 World Series while playing in one of the biggest sports cities in America. The New York Mets, from the start, have been considered the Yankees' little brother and the less important team in New York, mainly because of the difference in World Series wins, where the Yankees have 27 and the Mets have 2 rings. Also, 19 of those rings were won before the Mets were even founded, and they won their 20th on the same year that the New York Mets entered MLB, while the Mets went just 40 and 120. But that was their first season, so we will cut them some slack. However, just 7 years later, the Mets won their franchise's first World Series after winning 100 games, and they even had 2 legendary pitchers, Nolan Ryan and Tom Seaver. They were then pretty bad until the next time that they won a World Series in 1968, which was their last World Series win to date. In the 38 years following, there might have been very little success, but I can assure you that there have been a lot of miserable memories for that fan base. So let's make them relive some of those tragic memories. But before all that, if Mets fans or any other fans would like the opposite of tragic memories, then check out my sponsor, OddsJam. OddsJam is the top choice for data-driven sports betting, tracking over 260 sports books in real time. With OddsJam, you'll become a profitable sports bettor using strategies similar to those employed by successful investors and traders. How does it work? Thanks to the OddsJam arbitrage tool, which identifies discrepancies in sports betting lines across the market, this tool finds arbitrage betting opportunities, guaranteeing risk-free profits by spotting these differences. You can even bet on both sides of the market and still make a profit. But that's not all. OddsJam also offers a positive EV calculator to help you optimize your bet sizes and a bet tracker to monetize your profits across all your sportsbook accounts. By using OddsJam, you'll bet smarter and more responsibly, leading to long-term profitability. Plus, they're so confident in their product that they offer a 7-day free trial. Ready to try it out? Use code PESKY for a 35% discount on your first month. Personally, I want to start with the most recent incident at the time of writing this script, because it's one of the most wild sports stories I've ever seen on a baseball diamond, and I just need to talk about it first. Former All-Star pitcher Jorge Lopez was having a solid season for the Mets before he had his worst outing of the season, where he gave up an absolute bomb to Shohei Ohtani, and then all chaos ensued. Lopez screamed at the umpire multiple times and eventually got ejected, because that's simply not something you're allowed to do. After that, he did something even crazier, and that was then throwing his glove into the stands where a fan caught it and was able to keep it. Obviously, this was something that you should not do, so after the game, when Lopez was being interviewed, he was asked whether or not he regretted his actions. This was his quote on the subject.
Looking back on it, do you regret doing that?
No. I think I've been looking the worst team in probably in the whole MLB, so...
Just to clarify what you said, just because I didn't fully understand, did you say I'm on the worst team? Is that what you had said?
Yeah, probably, it looked like.
There has been a lot of different interpretations of what Lopez actually said in this interview. It sounded like he said he's on the worst team in all of MLB, but he said that he meant he's the worst teammate in the entire MLB. However, the reporter then asked if he meant to say he was the worst teammate or if the Mets were the worst team, and he said both. So he did double down on the fact that he thinks that the Mets are awful. So truthfully, I think he was trying to do damage control and say that he didn't say that the Mets were the worst team in the league after having time to think about his actions. However, the Mets still DFA'd Lopez after saying that he represented the organization in a way that was inexcusable, for swearing in his press conference after the game, which, by the way, players do all the time, so this was clearly incorrect. And also throwing his glove into the crowd, which is probably a much more reasonable reason to DFA a player. However, Lopez has had problems with mental health in the past. In 2023, Lopez missed just over 15 games after being placed on the mental health IL. I got off the line a little bit. I recognized that. Good thing I got some help. And like I said, I really appreciate what the team's been doing, what the staff's been doing. I couldn't be more thankful for it. They just want me to be there and be good. That's all I want to do. And that's what I'm trying to pay back to them. So hopefully we stay concentrated, execute all the pitches, and I'm ready to roll. This is what Lopez said about getting placed on the mental health IL in the past. And of course, this is when he was a member of the Minnesota Twins. Unfortunately, Lopez is now on the worst team in baseball, and instead of the Mets noticing an issue and stepping in to protect their player, they had him pitch when he was obviously struggling mentally, and then instead of siding with their player, they cut him, and now he's all on his own. And the reason why Lopez is struggling with mental health right now is a very reasonable one, and it's that his son, his only child, is not only going through a lot physically right now, he's waiting for a transplant to help him, which obviously is one of the single most stressful experiences a parent can go through. And even if you don't have kids, you know that. Let's just take a moment to remember that these players are human beings and have struggles of their own, even if it might not seem like that. So a bad appearance or an outburst here and there should be expected. However, the Mets apparently expect nothing to go wrong ever, and if you show any level of care, accountability, or emotion, you will be promptly moved on from. This is just one of the many, many problems with the current Mets organization. But the Mets have been the laughingstock of Major League Baseball for a long time now. So how about we go back and look at some of their greatest moments? Let's start with their greatest trade to date, where they traded a 24-year-old Nolan Ryan and 3 other prospects to the Angels for known superstar Jim Fregrossi, who played just 146 games with the Metropolitans and batting over .230 in his time in Queens. Along with that, he hit just 5 home runs and then was traded away 19 months later for cash. So that trade is kind of looking like the Babe Ruth Curse of Bambino trade, because my God, they basically ended up trading Nolan Ryan for cash. What a trade. They also traded away Tom Seaver, who had already won 3 Cy Youngs by the time he was sent off. However, he was 32 years old when that trade happened, and even though the return was awful, the better years of Seaver's career were already past him. However, trading one of the best players in your franchise's history for a return that was very, very little is just never a good trade. The Mets have had many bad trades throughout their history, but they've had much worse managers, like Carlos Beltran, who got fired before he managed a single game due to his contributions to the 2017 Astros cheating scandal. This really isn't that bad, it's just fairly hilarious that the man was literally fired before the season had even started. That one wasn't that bad for the Mets. However, this next one is an absolutely horrible look for the team. In 2019, former Mets manager Mickey Callaway got into it with a beat reporter after he called out one of his pitching changes after a bad outing. Callaway then got in his face, cussed him out, and then one of his pitchers actually charged at the reporter and said he was going to knock him out. The only reason why he didn't make contact with the reporter was he was held back by his teammates. Of course, Callaway was soon fired after this incident because you're not allowed to start a riot in your own clubhouse. And then, a few years later, he got suspended by Major League Baseball for being a terrible person, and then was fired after just 33 games by his his team in the professional Mexican baseball league, after also failing as a manager in that league as well. They've definitely had some major problems with managers acting up, but have things also gone as off the wall with their players as well? Yes. One time, Mets opening day starter Matt Harvey actually missed opening day due to a blood clot in his bladder, which was due to the fact that he held his urine in too long, like a toddler that didn't understand the concept of needing to urinate when they have the urge. He then said it's a known problem that he has, and he just needs to learn how to pee more. Only the Mets, literally only the Mets, could have an issue like that. My absolute favorite Mets moment of all time is surrounding Mets outfielder Yoenis Cespedes, who literally just went missing in the middle of the 2020 MLB season. He played 8 games and was struggling in the season, so he personally decided that his career was over. However, instead of telling his team or his teammates, he just left. Like, straight up and left, and apparently didn't answer his phone for multiple days. So the Major League Baseball team genuinely had one of their players go missing, and it was later found out it was because he would rather retire than continue playing for the Mets. Eventually, Cespedes got into contact with the Mets on his ranch, and that was the end of Yoenis Cespedes in Major League Baseball. However, it's not the end of his glorious Mets stories, or even his ranch. Cespedes also had to miss a decent chunk of one of his Mets seasons after getting trampled by a boar on his ranch, which put him on the IL. Imagine this happening to any other team ever. Ran over by a boar? It's like a sick joke in an MLB The Show franchise game. However, it's real, and it's because the New York Mets are a franchise that exists on the planet that we live on. Wilmer Flores was a former Met who thought he was getting traded while playing on a game near the trade deadline because he was told by his manager that he was traded. Instead of taking him off the field like a normal team would, they left Wilmer on the field, where he was upset that he was moving on from the team and started crying. He continued on, and eventually he got a walk-off base knock to end his Mets career. Except it didn't, because the trade fell through anyway. Former Met Zach Wheeler was kicked out of the Mets dugout during the postseason because he was injured and couldn't play. And for some reason, that meant to the Mets that he wasn't allowed to support his teammates and watch the game. Even Brandon Nimmo once got a foodborne illness after failing to cook chicken properly. The Mets then forced him to learn how to cook chicken correctly so he wouldn't get another foodborne illness. Even their mascot, Mr. Met, has gotten fired for doing bad things. Mr. Met was fed up with some fans late in a game, so he decided to flip them off for some reason. The cameras for the broadcast caught Mr. Met, and then he was fired after the game because he flipped off the fans, which is obviously something as a mascot you cannot do. I've saved 3 of my absolute favorite all-time Mets moments for last, because these 3 really just nicely sum up who the Mets really are and tie up the whole video into a nice bow. The Mets lost a game in the worst way possible a while back against the Yankees, where they dropped an infield pop-up at second base. I feel like everyone ever has seen this clip, and it's truly just a perfect way to sum up the Mets. So close, but yet so damn far. My absolute favorite clip, though, was when the former manager for the Mets, Bobby Valentine, decided to sneak back into the dugout wearing a disguise after being ejected in 1999. This wasn't really a bad moment for the Mets, but it was absolutely hilarious, and I will never forget this legendary moment in Major League Baseball. The final Mets moment turned into an MLB holiday, which is referred to as the Bobby Bonilla Day. This infamous contract that the Mets gave to Bobby Bonilla is still going strong, and I'm sure you've heard of it. But do you know how stupid it really is? The Mets decided to buy out Bobby's contract in 2000. However, they decided instead of paying the remaining $6 million on the contract, they decided to pay $1.2 million every year from 2011 to 2035, which is a value of about $30 million. So the Mets, for some reason, decided it would be better to pay $30 million instead of $6 million. That's just Mets math. Even their owner, Steve Cohen, now embraces the insanity of Bobby Bonilla and has recently tweeted that it's his favorite holiday. The Mets are just simply the Mets, and you gotta love watching them constantly collapse because it's truly hilarious. It's fun seeing the Mets make a headline because you know it's going to be the craziest headline that has ever existed, because simply it's just how the Mets handle their business. Comment down below what your favorite Mets moment is and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, watch another video right here on screen if you're interested.